You're facing the final boss in Act 3. Your heart is pounding. You are down to less than half your HP. The boss winds up for a devastating attack, and you think, this is it, another run down the drain. But then, you play your hand. Strength goes through the roof. A simple bash dealt 52 damage, and you watch the boss crumple. That feeling? That is why we play Slay the Spire 2. Hi, welcome back to Tiger and Tigress Gaming. I'm your host, and today we are breaking down exactly how you, a brand new player, can win your very first run in Slay the Spire 2 using the Ironclad. No fluff, no jargon soup, just two beginner-friendly, battle-tested builds that will carry you from floor 1 all the way to the top of the spire, and I'm going to walk you through every single step. Whether you've died in Act 1 10 times in a row, or you're just starting out and want to hit the ground running, this video is for you. So grab your deck, sharpen your sword, and let's climb. First things first, why the Ironclad? Out of all 5 characters in Slay the Spire 2, the Ironclad is widely considered the most beginner-friendly. He's a big, beefy warrior who hits hard, takes hits, and heals a little after every fight thanks to his starting relic, Burning Blood, which restores 6 HP at the end of each combat. That passive healing is a lifesaver in the early game. It means your small mistakes are forgiving, and you have a bit more room to experiment. Compared to the other characters, the Ironclad lets you focus on learning the game's core systems without punishing every suboptimal choice. Now, his playstyle revolves around 3 things: strength scaling, block management, and smart use of exhaust cards. Today we're going to focus on 2 of the best beginner archetypes, but before we get into the builds, let me give you a few early game tips that apply to every Ironclad run. By the way, if you're brand new to Slay the Spire 2 and still getting your head around the core mechanics, we actually made a video on exactly that. Our ultimate beginner's guide for Slay the Spire 2 covers everything from how energy works to reading enemy intent, all the foundational stuff you need before diving into character-specific builds. I'll link it in the description and pin it in the comments, so go check that out after this video if you haven't already. Okay, tips time.
Tip number 1. Survive first, kill second. New players often make the mistake of going full aggression, stacking attack cards, ignoring block, and then getting dunked on by an elite. Resist that urge. In the early floors, your priority is survivability. You need a good mix of attacks and defensive cards, so you can take hits without bleeding out before Act 2 even starts. Tip number 2, embrace AoE early. Act 1 is full of multi-enemy encounters. Cards that hit all enemies at once, what we call AoE, or Area of Effect, are incredibly efficient in these fights. 2 cards you should be actively looking for here are Thunderclap and Stomp. Thunderclap deals 4 damage to all enemies and applies 1 vulnerable to all of them, making them take 50% more damage from your next attack. For just 1 energy, that's incredible value. Grab it whenever you see it early. Stomp is another fantastic AoE option. It deals damage to all enemies and, crucially, hits hard enough to clear out weaker enemies in 1 shot, leaving you to focus your energy on the bigger threats. What makes Stomp special is that it scales well into the mid-game too, so it doesn't become dead weight as the run progresses. If you can't find Thunderclap, Stomp is an excellent alternative. If you find both, even better. Your multi-enemy fights will be a breeze. Tip number 3, always have a block engine. Block is how you stay alive, and the best all-rounder block card in the Ironclad's kit is Shrug It Off. For 1 energy, it gives you 8 block and draws a card. That draw effect is massive. It keeps your hand topped up so you can keep playing cards rather than getting stuck with nothing useful. Shrug It Off goes into almost every Ironclad deck regardless of your strategy. If you see it, take it. Tip number 4, don't bloat your deck. Every time you finish a combat, you get offered 3 cards to add to your deck. The temptation is always to take something, but a smaller, more focused deck is almost always better than a big, messy one. It's totally fine to skip a card reward if nothing fits your current plan. Remember, you can also visit the shop to remove cards from your deck. Removing your starter strike cards is often one of the best investments you can make. If removing can those small ones, try removing the strike cards first. Tip number 5, read the map. Before every floor, look at the path ahead. Plan routes that take you through question mark rooms, these can offer powerful relics, and time your elite fights for when you have enough HP and a strong enough deck to handle them. Rushing headfirst into elites in Act 1 is a very common way to end a run early. Now that you've got the fundamentals down, let's get into the good stuff, the builds. Build number 1 is called the Strength and Vulnerability build, and the short version is this. You make yourself hit like a freight train, and you make your enemies softer targets. The result? You delete enemies before they even get a chance to hurt you. Offense is the defense. Let's break it down. Strength is a permanent stat. Every point of strength you have adds that much damage to every single attack you play. Stack 10 strength and your basic strike, which normally does 6 damage, now does 16. Stack 20 strength and you're hitting for 26. With a multi-hit card, each individual hit gets the bonus. The math gets absolutely silly very fast. Vulnerable is a debuff you apply to enemies. Any enemy with vulnerable on them takes 50% more damage from your attacks. So if you're already hitting for 26, vulnerable bumps that up to 39. Combined with strength scaling, fights can be over in a single turn by mid-game. The goal of this build is simple. Get your strength high, keep enemies vulnerable, and enjoy watching their health bars disappear. Card 1, Inflame. This is your bread and butter strength card. For 1 energy, Inflame permanently gives you 2 strength, or 3 when upgraded. It's an uncommon power card, meaning it stays in play once you put it down. This is one of the first cards you should be actively hunting for in this build. The earlier you get it, the more damage you deal for the rest of the run. Card 2, Demon Form. Demon Form costs 3 energy, which feels expensive, but here's the thing. Demon Form is a power card that gives you 2 strength at the start of every single turn. Every turn. By the time you hit turn 3 after playing it, you've effectively gained 6 strength from 1 card. By turn 5, you're sitting at 10 extra strength from Demon Form alone. This card single-handedly wins boss fights. It's rare, so don't pass it up. Card 3, Vicious. Vicious is a power that allows you to draw 1 card whenever you apply Vulnerable. When upgraded, it allows you to draw 2 cards. When combined with Thunderclap and Taunt, this becomes a draw engine which would allow you to get to the cards you need quickly. Card 4, Taunt. Taunt costs 1 energy. It gives you 7 block and applies 1 vulnerable to an enemy. And when upgraded, it gives you 8 block and applies 2 vulnerable. This is a versatile card as it builds up your defense and debuffs the enemy at the same time. Relics are the passive items you pick up throughout your run, and the right ones can supercharge a strength build enormously. Here are the 2 you should be hoping to find. Relic 1, Vajra. Vajra is a simple but devastating relic. It gives you 1 permanent strength at the start of every run, right from your very first fight. That might sound small, but remember, strength applies to every single attack you play across every combat in the run. 1 free strength from turn 0 means every hit you ever land does 1 extra point of damage. And when you're already scaling strength with Inflame and Demon Form, that head start compounds beautifully. If you get offered Vajra, take it without hesitation. Relic 2, Bag of Marbles. Bag of Marbles applies 1 vulnerable to all enemies at the start of every combat. Every fight begins with your enemies already softened up, meaning your very first attack hits 50% harder before you've even played a single card. In Act 1 especially, this relic can let you tear through multi-enemy encounters in 2 or 3 turns flat. It also synergizes perfectly with Taunt and Vicious, since you're stacking Vulnerable on top of existing Vulnerable right from the off. An incredibly efficient relic for this build that makes every combat feel slightly tilted in your favor. Early turns. In the first few rounds of a fight, play your strength cards first. Inflame, Demon Form if you have it, to establish your damage baseline. Use Taunt or Vicious to get Vulnerable up on the enemy. Mid-turns. Once you have a few strength stacks and vulnerable on the enemy, your attacks are doing significantly boosted damage. Prioritize your hardest hitting attacks now. Late turns, or boss fights. With demon form ticking up your strength each turn, you eventually reach a threshold where a single combo turn, Taunt into a big attack, ends the fight outright. You barely need to block because the enemy is dead before they attack again. A common beginner mistake with this build is forgetting to include block cards. Because you're focused on building strength and applying vulnerable, it's easy to end up with a handful of attacks and no block when the boss is about to hit you for 40 damage. Always make sure you have at least 5 to 7 solid block cards in your deck alongside your offensive package. Shrug It Off and Flame Barrier are your best friends here. Also, this build takes a few turns to get online. In very fast, aggressive fights, you might take some early damage before your strength engine is running. Use your early turns to build up block while you set up, then pivot to offense once your buffs are established.
Okay, this is my personal favorite build for beginners, and honestly, it might be one of the most satisfying things you can do in Slay the Spire, too. The block and body slam build. The philosophy is this: become an absolute fortress. Stack so much block that enemies literally cannot hurt you, and then take all of that block you've accumulated and throw it at your enemy's face as damage. Body Slam deals damage equal to your current block, so if you have 50 block built up, Body Slam hits for 50. If you have 80 block, 80 damage. If you have 120 block because of a really good turn, 120 damage. One card, one energy, instant win. This build is fantastic for beginners because it essentially solves two problems at once: staying alive and dealing damage with the same resource. You're never wasting turns. Every block card you play is also setting up your next kill. In a normal game, block resets to 0 at the start of your next turn. The engine of this build is preventing that from happening, or at least building blocks so quickly each turn that your number stays high. The two pillars of this build are defensive consistency and payoff timing. You spend most of the fight being a wall, piling on block and waiting. Then, at the perfect moment, you play Body Slam and hit the enemy for the entire pile of block you've been accumulating. One big swing that usually ends the fight. Card 1, Body Slam. This is your win condition. A 1 energy attack that deals damage equal to your current block value. Upgraded, the card will cost 0 energy. The beautiful thing is that Body Slam is a common card, meaning you'll see it fairly often in card rewards. Grab it as early as possible because the whole build revolves around it. Card 2, Shrug It Off. We already talked about this one in the basics section, and here it's even more important. In this build, Shrug It Off is a dual-purpose card. It contributes block toward your Body Slam setup and draws a card to keep your combo going. Run multiple copies of it. When upgraded, it gives 11 block. That's exceptional efficiency. Card 3, Barricade. This is the card that transforms the build from good to broken. Barricade is a power card that makes it so your block no longer resets at the start of your turn. Your block carries over. That 30 block you built last turn, still there. Stack more on top of it, and more the turn after. By the time you play Body Slam, you might be sitting on 80 or 100 block. This is a rare card, but hunting for it should be a top priority in this build. If you find Barricade, you are likely going to win that run. Card 4, Impervious. Impervious is a 2 energy skill that grants a massive 30 block in one go, and once upgraded, it gives 40 block. The only downside is it exhausts after you play it, meaning it leaves your deck. But 30 to 40 block from a single card is extraordinary, especially for boss fights where you need to survive a devastating opening attack. Think of it as your emergency panic button that also happens to charge up your Body Slam enormously. The right relics here do exactly what you'd hope. They give you more block for free, which means a bigger Body Slam without spending a single extra card. Relic 1, Ornamental Fan. Ornamental Fan gives you 4 block every time you play 3 attack cards in a single turn.
Now, a block-focused deck isn't always attack-heavy, but those moments when you do chain attacks together, you're getting free block on top of everything else. As your deck grows and you start cycling through more cards per turn, the fan activates more often than you'd expect. 4 free block here and there adds up quickly, and in this build, every point of block is also potential body slam damage. It's a quiet relic that quietly wins fights. Relic 2, Anchor. Anchor is arguably even more impactful for this build. It gives you 10 block at the start of every single combat, before you even draw your first hand. 10 free block from turn 1 means you're already ahead on your body slam setup before the enemy has taken a single swing at you. In early fights especially, 10 block can be the difference between taking 0 damage and taking a hit. And since this build's whole game plan is accumulating block, getting a free 10-point head start in every fight is genuinely huge. If you see Anchor in a relic reward, grab it immediately. Early turns. Your goal here is survival first, setup second. Play your block cards, deal whatever damage you can with your basic strikes, and crucially, try to hold off on using Body Slam until your block value is meaningful. Hitting for 10 with Body Slam is fine, but saving it for 50 is a win condition. Mid-turns. Once you get Barricade on the board, this is where the build explodes. Stop worrying about your block resetting. It won't. Every block card you play is permanently adding to your total. Keep piling on. Use Shrug it off to draw into more block cards. Occasionally, check in with your hand. If you have a Body Slam and your block is already very high, now might be a good time to use it. Late turns and boss fights. This is where the build truly shines. Most bosses have a pattern. They attack, then wind up for a huge attack. Use their wind-up turn to pile on as much block as possible, then unleash Body Slam on their next attack for the full value. You're essentially absorbing damage and converting it into your offense simultaneously. Boss fights can feel like you're barely even taking damage.
The main weakness of this build is enemies that apply Weak to you, which reduces your attack damage by 25%. If Body Slam is affected by Weak, your big swing hits for significantly less. Also, if you don't find Barricade, this build still works. It just requires more precision. Without Barricade, you need to time your Body Slam at the end of a very big turn. Pile on block with multiple cards and immediately hit Body Slam in the same turn before it resets. It's a little more demanding, but absolutely still viable. Finally, because this build focuses heavily on block and skill cards, your deck can end up short on raw damage. Make sure you're keeping enough attack cards to handle scenarios where Body Slam isn't available, and consider supplementing with Flam Barrier for passive chip damage. Here's a secret. These two builds blend beautifully. Nothing stops you from running both Barricade and Inflame in the same deck. You can play conservatively early, build your strength with Inflame while stacking block, and then close out fights with either a giant Body Slam or an insanely overpowered strength-boosted attack. As you get more comfortable with the game, experiment with hybrid approaches. The best Ironclad decks in Slay the Spire usually draw from multiple archetypes, rather than going pure into just one. Alright, let's bring it all together. The Ironclad is the perfect character for your first run in Slay the Spire 2, and now you've got 2 solid game plans to work with. If you love the idea of becoming an unstoppable killing machine that deletes enemies before they can touch you, go with the Strength and Vulnerability build. Hunt for Inflame and Demon Form early. Keep Taunt and Vicious in your toolkit and watch your damage numbers go absolutely astronomical. If you'd rather play it safe, feel comfortable and in control, and absolutely punish enemies for daring to attack you, go with the Block and Body Slam build. Stack your defense, find Barricade as soon as possible, and experience the unique joy of hitting a boss for triple digits with a single card. And remember the fundamentals. Prioritize survivability in Act 1. Grab Thunderclap and Shrug it off early. Keep your deck lean and focused, and read the map before you move. Most importantly, don't get discouraged if you don't win your first run, or your second, or your fifth. Every run teaches you something. Every death is a lesson, and when you finally do clear that final boss and see that victory screen for the first time, trust us, it is absolutely worth it. If this video helped you out, drop a like and let us know in the comments which build you're going with. Are you Team Strength or Team Body Slam? We love hearing from you. And if you want more guides, tips, and genuine fun with games like this, hit subscribe and join the Tiger and Tigress family. We are here playing games and making new content every now and then, and we'd love to have you with us. Until next time, good luck on your runs, and we'll see you on the next floor.